You have probably heard of the Nerf brand in one way or another. From the action-packed commercials to the rows upon rows of guns lining the Walmart shelves. Or you just had that weird friend that collected them until he had an arsenal capable of destroying all that opposed him on the school playground. Either way, Nerf was and still is a rather big and prevalent brand in the toy gun world, so it wouldn't be completely surprising that a video game would be developed and based on the popular brand. This game was called Nerf Legends and was released late last year to a rather negative reception, which may have seemed odd to some because it was a first-person shooter and that seemed to be the only proper way to adapt the Nerf brand to the video game world. I was intrigued by Nerf Legends ever since it was released because I knew it was going to be bad, but I wondered just how bad it could be, so I attempted to buy it for $50. Yeah, that's how much they charged for that. Then I realized I would be paying for $50 for Nerf Legends, which would be a crime to charge that much for a kid's game about toy guns. So I waited until it was on sale for only around $15 and I bought the game. And after playing through basically all the content the game had to offer, this is my overall experience and opinion on Nerf Legends. Let's start this review off with an overview of the gameplay. The gameplay of Nerf Legends pretty much follows your basic formula for a first-person shooter, with a couple of additions. Your character has a load of 4 weapons in total. 2 primary weapons, which can either be automatic guns, shotguns, or burst weapons, 1 sidearm, so like a pistol, and 1 melee weapon for close quarters combat. The weapons in this game are all pretty mediocre, but I found myself sticking with the single-shot shotgun and the burst-fire SMG in my playthrough of the campaign, while also using a revolver and a battle axe as my backup weapons. The gunplay in this game can be strange at times, with the projectiles being fully physical objects that have no hit scan, much like the Nerf darts in real life, which can make lining up shots on enemies difficult at times, since both players and the AI enemies in the game can move very unpredictably and quickly. I eventually got used to the gunplay, but the developers should have made some way to balance the difficult aiming and the enemy movement in the game. Another thing projectiles do in this game when they hit an enemy, or sometimes when you miss a shot, the dart will appear on the ground and can be picked up when walked over by a player, which is a cool way to reference how you can just pick up fired Nerf darts up off the ground into your gun in real life. The problem with this is that there's never a certainty that this will happen, and to be honest, gaining 1 dart in a situation is never a game changer. I'll explain why later. The other gameplay mechanics are aiming in, but there's no iron sights, double jumps and slides, which are actually really fun and make the movement one of the better parts of the game, and an energy shield you can bring out to protect yourself. I forgot to use this for my entire playthrough of the campaign though, but that's okay. And that's pretty much all the basic gameplay mechanics. I'll get into more specific ones when I talk about the gameplay modes. Now let's just move on to talking about the art style of the game. The art style of Nerf Legends is honestly very decent, looking just how I'd expect a kid's Nerf game to look. Very simplistic, and like bright colors and that kind of stuff. The characters look pretty decent, and the environments are sometimes great looking depending on what map or campaign mission you're playing. The enemy designs and how they fit in with the world are all nice looking and they're all fairly unique. All the areas in the campaign and most of the multiplayer maps are all fairly unique and look pretty different while being true to the art style and the overall theme of the game. Overall, the art style of this game is one of the things I liked about it the most, and one of the better things in this game. Now, let's move on to the first gameplay mode of Nerf Legends, the single-player campaign, also known as the Gauntlet. The Gauntlet is the campaign mode of Nerf Legends, where you play as a silent protagonist who is going through virtual simulations to become the new Nerf Grandmaster. There are 5 areas you must play through to achieve this, each area filled with hostile Nerf bots, yeah, that's what they name the enemies, that want to stop you from completing the levels. The first area being a short tutorial that teaches you the basics of the game. After that, you're flung into the first area. Each area has usually 3 to 5 levels that you must play through, and they all end in a boss fight against a Nerf master. My main problem with these levels before boss fight levels are simply that they often consist of only 2 concepts that the level switches between through its duration. These 2 concepts are, number 1, fight a massive group of enemies, More often than not, in every fight, your character will be grossly outnumbered by enemies, with these enemies often having better movement, aim, and damage capabilities than you. These enemies will absolutely swarm you and decimate you if you stay still. So you have to use your double jump and slide abilities to keep moving so you can't be caught up by the enemy swarm. This heavily movement-based combat reminds me of games like Doom Eternal, where you need to keep moving unless you want to die very, very quickly. And this movement aspect of combat is one of the more fun aspects of it. The enemies in this game are very plentiful and have a lot of variety in enemy types, from simple crabs that crawl slowly and blast you, flying drones that can dodge your shots with evasive maneuvers, and even massive brutes that will stomp on you if you get too close. The enemy variety in this game is very good and keeps the combat scenarios feeling fresh and fun, even if the clunkiness of the gameplay drags the combat down a bit. The second thing that makes up the levels in the game are really repetitive and boring puzzle sections, with you often going to find buttons to press or shoot or whatever. And yes, I know this is a kid's game, so I'm not expecting top-tier puzzles, but honestly, when I'm going through a puzzle section in this game, I can't wait for it to be over, just so I can just shoot some stuff again. All the levels suffer from this problem, with all the levels feeling way too long than they need to be, with long fighting sections and frequent puzzles padding the levels for max length. After the 3 or 4 normal battles of the area, you must fight against the area's master in a boss battle. And let me tell you that these bosses aren't well made at all, with their AI struggling to provide a challenge and even move correctly. With the master more often than not standing still or moving very slowly, making them easy to kill. But the way these bosses are structured is that they operate on a best 3 out of 5 system, with you having to beat the boss 3 times in order to claim victory. This just feels like more padding to make the fight longer, and the only thing most bosses do to increase the challenge in later rounds is just summon lesser enemies to swarm you. It doesn't help that your health carries over between rounds, so if you beat the boss once with a small amount of health left, you will be left with that small amount as the boss gets all of its health back, as well as minions to make your life even harder. Some later bosses have abilities like cloning themselves to make you confused or slaying the ground to knock you back, but none of these abilities really enhance the fights that much. The campaign ends with you facing off against the Grand Master, the supposedly most powerful Nerf master of them all. His fight has the worst arena in the game, with it heavily relying on platforming and being filled with one of the most powerful base enemies in the game. This boss only took me 1 attempt though. This was the same for other bosses. The only reason I had to try again on one boss was because the game glitched and threw me out of the map. Overall, the campaign mode of Nerf Legends is a very repetitive and boring series of levels with no real story to speak of. Now let's move on to the aspect I was most excited for when I bought this game, the multiplayer. So, I was originally excited for the multiplayer section of this review, but then I booted up the old Nerf Legends multiplayer mode and I found that there were no people playing this game. So I did the rational thing, and I bought another copy of the game for another $15 from my friend Brokowski the Great, and we did some one-on-one Nerf Legends. The game has 4 game modes in total, which I will talk about in order me and Brokowski played them, starting with Nerf Tagout and Team Nerf Tagout. These 2 game modes are Nerf versions of Deathmatch and Team Deathmatch respectively. These game modes both follow that type of formula: get enough kills, or tagouts as they are called here, before the time runs out, or simply have more kills than the enemy team when the time runs out to win. This was a pretty decent game mode to play 1v1, and it was made more fun by the movement mechanics like sliding and double jumping. Overall, a decent game mode. And when I say game mode instead of game modes, I mean because it was a 1v1, we couldn't even play Nerf Tagout because only 2 people. The next game mode we played was a capture the flag mode, where the 2 teams had to fight over a point and whoever captured it all the way won the game. Once again, not very fun to play with only 2 players. So this was our least favorite so far, as the game was over in a matter of minutes. The last game that we played was called Golden Dart, so we assumed that would be a one-in-the-chamber type mode. Boy, were we wrong. The goal in Golden Dart is to obtain the sacred Golden Dart. Once this happens, an orb will spawn in the center of the arena. The holder of the Golden Dart must shoot the dart into the orb to get a point for their team. The dart then respawns somewhere else on the map, and the match continues. This was much different than what we expected it to be, but this was the mode we had the most fun with, in my opinion. with a unique objective and another great opportunity to use a fun movement system, like you can slide in any direction and double jumps are really nice. Overall, the multiplayer of Nerf Legends is very, very dead, but it can be fun at times, with some good, unique game modes. Also, thanks for Brokowski for playing with me. His channel link is in the description. Now on to the customization system of Nerf Legends. The customization system in Nerf Legends is pretty simple, with the player being able to choose from things like hair, armor, and skin color. There's a pretty big number of customization options that you can get, like visors, glasses, helmets, armor, that kind of stuff. You can all get these with points you earn in the campaign levels and multiplayer matches, which encourages you to do good while playing the campaign and multiplayer, because so you can get points that you can spend on new gear for your character. You also gain the appearances of the Nerf Masters if you defeat them in the campaign, which encourages you playing for the whole campaign. There are also a lot of weapon skins you can unlock with the point system, which I didn't really do because I was more focused on unlocking actual weapons with the point system. There are also cool dinosaur-styled armor like T-Rex, Triceratops, and Stegosaurus. You can unlock these by buying them for about $12 each. I would definitely not buy these because it's only like $12 for one skin. If you wanted all of them, you'd have to pay probably $40 for all of them. Overall, the customization is pretty decent in Nerf Legends, even if the DLC's skins cost way too much for what they are. Now let's finish this review with some closing words and my final thoughts on this game. Overall, Nerf Legends is a pretty mediocre experience that is much too expensive for a price it is. The campaign is pretty repetitive and mediocre overall because of all of the same puzzles that are very repetitive and dumb AI that kind of drags the combat down a little bit. The whole combat system is it's okay, but it's not very fleshed out and it's not very well put together, which makes the combat feel clunky. The multiplayer mode is bone dry, but there's no one playing this game. And the modes offered aren't very fun other than Golden Dart, which we only played for a couple rounds. The customization is pretty okay, but that's about it, with skins that cost way too much, and yeah. The only good points I have to say about this game is that the art style is good. It's really colorful, it's really nice, it looks like a Nerf Legends game would. The combat and movement systems are pretty fun to execute, with stuff like you can slide in any direction to dodge enemy bullets and stuff, and that kind of thing, yeah. Overall, I would not recommend playing this game, or buying it for full price at least, because its full price is about $50. I bought it on sale for around $15, but I ended up paying $30 because I had to get a copy for Brokowski. So I would not recommend playing this game. That is about all I have to say about Nerf Legends. Please remember to subscribe and like if you liked this review, or dislike if you didn't like it. I'm not your boss, you can do what you want. So yeah, that's all for today. This has been Jimmy Blair Reviews, or whatever I'm going to call this, I don't know. That's all for today. Goodbye.